He stops a few steps before reaching the large oak tree. Not close enough to touch it. Not far enough to leave. The creek moves quietly behind the tree. Slow water over smooth stones. He stands there the way he has stood many times before. Still, the large oak tree spreads its branches over the narrow bank. The trunk is thick, dark, steady. The bark carries the same deep lines it always had. Nothing about it appears different. The person keeps his hands at his sides. For a moment, he shifts his weight forward, as if he might step closer. Then he settles back again. The large oak tree remains exactly where it has always been. The creek continues moving beside it. Soft. Patient. He looks at the ground near the roots. The soil is dry today. A few thin leaves rest near the edge of the creek. He notices them the same way someone might notice a familiar mark on a wall. Without surprise, without curiosity, his eyes move slowly up the trunk of the large oak tree. Past the rough bark. Past the lower branches. He has done this before. Many times. The wind moves lightly through the leaves above. The branches sway just enough to make a faint rustling sound. He listens. Not carefully. Just long enough to confirm the sound is still there. His hand lifts slightly. Not toward the tree. Just upward for a moment, as if remembering something his body once did without thinking. Then his hand lowers again. The large oak tree stands beside the quiet creek. The same as before. He looks at the water. The surface shifts slowly around a small bend near the roots. The movement is familiar. Everything here feels arranged the same way it always was. The tree, the creek, the space between them. He remains where he is, a few steps away, as if the distance itself has become part of the place. The wind passes again through the leaves of the large oak tree. He waits for a moment longer, and something about standing here no longer feels the way it once did. He comes back to the large oak tree at different hours. Sometimes early, when the air still feels cool and the creek moves slowly in the pale light. Sometimes later, when the light has already settled low and the shadows stretch across the bank. The large oak tree remains beside the quiet creek, unchanged. He does not approach it the same way each time. Some days he walks straight toward it, stopping near the wide roots where the ground dips slightly toward the water. Other days, he stops farther away, just close enough to see the trunk clearly, just far enough that the tree feels separate from him. The creek continues its slow movement beside the large oak tree. He often looks at the water first, not at the branches, not at the trunk, just the water. It moves around the same bend near the roots, slipping past small stones that never seem to shift. He stands there until the quiet of the place settles around him. Then his eyes move toward the tree. The bark carries the same deep lines. The branches spread wide, holding their shape against the open sky. Sometimes he steps closer, his shoes pressed lightly into the soil near the roots. He does not touch the large oak tree. His hand may rise for a moment, then pause, then lower again before reaching the bark. Other times he never comes that close. He remains near the edge of the narrow path that leads along the creek. From there, the tree appears larger, older, more distant. The wind moves through the leaves with a soft, steady rhythm. He listens without turning his head upward. The sound repeats itself every time he comes here. Rustling leaves, slow water, quiet air between the branches. On certain days, he stays longer, long enough for the light to shift across the trunk of the large oak tree, long enough for the shadows of the branches to move slowly across the ground. But the way he stands near the tree never settles into one pattern. Sometimes closer, sometimes farther, sometimes facing the creek instead. The large oak tree does not change. The creek continues beside it, and he returns again and again, as if the distance between him and the tree is something he is still learning how to keep. He arrives later than usual. The light near the creek is already thin. The large oak tree stands in the same place, its branches stretching over the slow water. For a while, he does not move toward it. He remains near the path, listening to the creek slide over the stones. The sound is softer at this hour, almost distant. He takes a few steps forward. Not all the way, just enough that the roots of the large oak tree come clearly into view. The ground near them carries the same shallow dip toward the water. He remembers standing there before. Many times, his foot shifts slightly, pressing into the soil. Then he stops. The wind moves through the branches above him. Leaves brush against one another with a dry, steady sound. His eyes move along the trunk of the large oak tree. Slowly, from the rough bark near the base to the first heavy branch above. He studies the lines in the bark as if they might hold something familiar. But his gaze does not stay long in one place. It moves, then returns again. For a moment, he steps closer. His hand lifts. Not fully, just enough that it hovers a short distance from the bark. The space between his hand and the trunk remains small, but he does not close it. The wind passes again through the leaves. The creek continues beside the large oak tree, unchanged. His hand stays there for a moment longer, then lowers. He looks toward the water instead. The creek bends gently around the roots. following the same path it always has. Nothing along the bank appears different. He shifts his weight. One step backward. Then stillness again. The large oak tree stands beside the creek exactly as before. The branches move softly above him. He remains there a while longer, near the edge of the roots, as if waiting for the place itself to settle into something he recognizes. But the quiet around the tree now holds a small distance that was not always there. He arrives once more at the quiet creek. The large oak tree stands where it always has, its branches stretching over the slow water. For a moment, he pauses on the narrow path, not from hesitation, just long enough to look. The trunk is dark against the fading light. The deep lines in the bark remain clear even from a distance. He walks a few steps closer, not all the way to the roots, the same place where he often stopped before. The creek moves steadily beside the large oak tree, sliding around the bend near the base of the trunk. The sound is familiar. Soft water, rustling leaves above. He stands there without shifting his feet. His eyes move once along the trunk, following the rough surface upward into the branches. The wind passes gently through the leaves. They move together in a quiet wave. For a moment, his hand lifts again. The same small motion, the same pause in the air, but this time it lowers sooner. He does not step forward. The distance between him and the large oak tree remains the same. The soil near the roots is undisturbed. The place where he once stood closer now remains empty. He turns his head slightly toward the creek. The water continues along its narrow path, slipping past the stones without slowing. Nothing here asks for his presence. Nothing holds it either. The large oak tree stands over the bank the way it always has. Steady, unmoving. He watches the leaves for a moment longer. The sound of them brushing together rises and fades with the wind. Then he takes a step backward. Slowly. Another step follows. The path behind him remains open. The same quiet stretch that led him here. He does not look away immediately. His eyes return once more to the large oak tree beside the creek. The branches sway gently above the water. The trunk remains dark and still against the fading light. Then he turns. His steps move along the path without pause. Behind him, the large oak tree remains beside the quiet creek, unchanged, and the space between them finally stays the way it is. Some moments are not missed by choice. They pass because there is no time left. Most people realize it much later. If you have ever looked back at a place you cannot return to, this feeling may be familiar.